Carl Froch is a character that...
Pro boxing fans, we are here in Riyadh. It is fight week. Frank Smith, always a pleasure to see you, sir. How's things? How's life?
Mate, good to be back in Riyadh. Another massive fight week in Riyadh. They seem to be rolling thick and fast, don't they? And we seem to be spending a lot of time here. But great to be back. Lovely weather. Beats the rain of the UK.
It does indeed. I'm receiving text messages actually saying how lucky I am to be here because it is chucking it down over there. Talk to me about this one though. It's a big one, this one. And a lot of people that I'm speaking to are saying potentially this is good. This has got fight of the year written over it. Two different styles. One is destructive puncture, Bivol's, the tactician, the mover. Just talk to me about this one, Frank. How excited are you that this fight is finally happening?
Yeah, look, I think it is the best fight in boxing right now. I think it's a fight that definitely without Riyadh season wouldn't have happened. I don't believe we would have got to see this fight without the involvement of Riyadh season. And yeah, just an amazing fight. I believe our man Dmitry Bivol is going to go in there and do the business. But a real fight. Artur Beterbiev, a brilliant fighter. But Dmitry Bivol, every time he steps up in those levels, he just shows how good he is. He showed that against Canelo Alvarez. Showed that against Ramirez. He is a brilliant fighter and a special fighter, and I think he's going to show that on Saturday night. But just a great night, excited for fight week. And I think hopefully this fight gets the credit, not just amongst the boxing fans, obviously it's got that, but amongst the wider audience, the wider sporting audience, because it's a fight that deserves, fans to tune in for. It's a massive, massive night. And like I say, Dmitry Bivol, undisputed, let's do it.
I do want to ask you about Bivol, first of all. A lot of people are saying, look, in the Canelo fight, he was fantastic, career best performance against a very valid opponent in Canelo. But since then, he's had fights with fighters that we can agree of lower level of opposition. And it seems that Dmitry Bivol's not sort of stepped up or not been as not convincing because he has won their fights, but people would like to see a knockout, like to see a good stoppage, and that hasn't been the case in some of them fights. Do you feel like the bigger the occasion it is for Dmitry, that we're going to see the best Dmitry Bivol?
Yeah, look, I think rightly or wrongly, as with anything in life, is about motivation. And when you've been in there with the best, and when you're going in there with the best, like in this fight against Artur Beterbiev, you need to be the best version of yourself. I think sometimes, not just Dmitry Bivol, but sometimes fighters can sort of come down in levels in fights where they're not as motivated. I'm not saying that's right, but that's the reality. I think, as you said, when he fought Canelo Alvarez, he showed his skill from round 1 to 12 in that fight. A brilliant performance from him. I think when you saw him last time out against Malik Zinedine, I'm not saying it's the level of fight, but I think you saw someone who knew what was ahead of him. Like he's been in that training camp for Beterbiev. He'd had the best camp of his life, and fighters say that a lot, but that was the best camp of his life because he knew what was ahead of him. And I think you saw a destructive performance there. I think you saw a side of him that maybe we haven't seen as much. But I think in this fight against Artur Beterbiev, you're going to see the best of Dmitry Bivol because he knows he's been working his whole life for this moment. He's been waiting for this moment his whole life. This is his chance to show he is number one in, like I say, probably the best fight in boxing that you will see.
What do you make of Artur Beterbiev? Obviously, I think Eddie said he finds him a bit arrogant in a few interviews. I know that there might have been a bit of frostiness when in regards to the Callum Smith fight, just before the Callum Smith fight. But what's your sort of relationship and what you like with that side of the team?
I don't really know him too well. We promoted a fight with him when he fought Callum Johnson. It was actually on our first US DAZN show back in 2018 in Chicago, where Callum Johnson dropped him. And he got back up, won the fight, obviously. He's a brilliant fighter. I think it's hard as well. He's not... Dimitri's come on, his English has improved a lot. His personality's come out a lot more with his English as well. And I think sometimes it's harder when you don't speak the language. The same on us. Like my Russian's not very good, in all honesty, to build a relationship. But I think that's probably a part of it. But like I say, I don't really know him too well personally. He's a brilliant fighter, and he shows in the ring what he's about.
Are we just going to get a great fight regardless of what happens? Because it just seems like with the power that Beterbiev carries and with the way that Bivol moves, like possibly we're just going to see just a great fight.
Yeah, I think the styles are... I'm never the tactician. I've always been quite honest about my relationship with the sport of boxing and more my focus on the business of boxing. But it's a brilliant fight. And when the two best come together, you see great fights, and it's what Riyadh season's all about. Really, is bringing the two best in all of these divisions together for the greatest fights in the sport. I think whatever happens, we're in for a great night. But I believe Dmitry Bivol is going to show levels like he has done in the past, and show when the test comes, he's the best.
I do want to talk about a fighter on this card who's obviously made a name in the last press conference, but just a big name in general, in Chris Eubank Jr. Obviously, you know him to an extent. What do you make of Chris Eubank obviously being out for quite a little while now and coming back into the ring? Looks like the main aim is going to be possibly a Conor Benn fight, which you guys might be pushing for, but what do you make of Chris Eubank Jr.? How quickly do you think we can see a big fight with Chris Eubank?
Look, I think he's had offers for big fights. I think maybe where I don't represent Chris Eubank, so I can't speak on his behalf, obviously, but where he's had time out of the ring, he'll be focusing on getting back, in the right kind of fight. And Sarah Meta's more of a warm-up fight, being open, being honest. It shouldn't be a real test for him, is the truth. But he needs that he needs that type of fight with his time out the ring. Yeah, look, there's massive fights to be made. I think he needs to get a good win against someone before the likes of a Canelo fight. But there's a massive fight. He's a massive name.
Is the Conor Benn fight a fight that you guys still want to make? I know he had a bit of a rant in the last press conference. It seems like things might have been sorted out. Is the Conor Benn fight the one that you guys still want to make with Chris?
Look, it's a massive fight. I've always been quite open about it. I've spent a lot of the last few years, where it took 10 or 12 weeks to make the fight the first time, which didn't end up happening for reasons we all know. It's a fight I want to see, and it has to make sense for everyone. And I believe it's the biggest fight out there for him, and for Conor as well. But it has to make sense. Everyone has to come together and make a deal that makes sense. So we'll see, But he's got to come through Saturday night. Conor's got his own situation that we hopefully are getting towards the end of now and getting to the bottom of things. And I believe we see that fight in 2025.
Do we have a date with Conor in regards to when he can officially return back to the ring?
I think we've said too many dates in the past. Just being open with you, where you get stuck to it and then people go, well, you said this, so hopefully soon. And I feel like we've been saying that for a long time, but I feel like we're getting there, and there will be news sooner rather than later.
We spoke about motivation for Dmitry Bivol. I do want to go on that theme on motivation for my next question, which is Anthony Joshua. A lot of people are saying, look, has AJ got the motivation now in boxing? Carl Froch, I think, alluded to it as a silk pajama effect. You've been around AJ for a long time. You've probably seen him, or you, Eddie, have spoken to him since. Is the motivation still there? Is the hunger still there from Anthony Joshua? Look,
100%. If the motivation was gone, this guy made more money than you can imagine many, many years ago. And if the motivation had gone, it would have gone then. He loves the sport of boxing. He wants to improve. He got caught with a massive shot against a 17, 18, 19 stone heavyweight in the first round, never really recovered, kept fighting. If the motivation wasn't there, he would have quit in the first round, wouldn't he? If that wasn't there anymore, Carl Froch is a character that likes to say things to get people talking, obviously. And, AJ, I think no one really in this sport gets sort of, not ridiculed is the wrong word, but judged like AJ does. Like when Tyson Fury had a bad night against Francis Ngannou, no one said he should retire. Really. No one was shouting that. Every time AJ's lost, he should retire. Got beat by Andy Ruiz, came back, avenged that defeat. Got beat by Usyk, who is arguably number one pound for pound in the sport right now, or amongst those names. If you don't think he's number one, he's up there. What he's done at cruiserweight and heavyweight. Went straight back in there, had a closer fight the second time around against Alexander Usyk. And then people go, he should retire. It's like, what on earth are you talking about? Like, there's no one gets that sort of judginess, or whatever the word may be, like AJ does.
Let me ask you then, what is that down to? Because it seems to be ex-fighters, pundits, whatever else that obviously we look at or we listen to on the radio, on TV, and obviously some of them have said this. What do you put it down to? Do you feel like there's a sense of jealousy amongst certain people that AJ has done so well? He's been the poster boy for British boxing for the last decade. That some people might not like it from that perspective.
Look, jealousy is one, but there's also probably an element if you talk about it and people listen, so it helps your own profile. Talking about someone, whether the opinion's right or wrong, it gets eyeballs and it gets views. And I think a lot of people do it for that reason. I think jealousy, though, is definitely a part of that for certain people as to why they take this view with him, because there's a lot of fighters, like people said Daniel Dubois should retire when he got beat by Joe Joyce. You know, like, what a weird sport. What I struggle to understand is, and fans can have their opinion, I'm not saying they shouldn't have their opinion, but don't we want to see real fights where the result could go either way? Like, isn't that what we're all here for? Like, I saw Oscar De La Hoya's thing the other day talking about Matchroom's fighters losing. Isn't that part of the game? Like, as in, I know our job as a promoter is to build a fighter up. I get that. I'm not shying away from that part. But at some point, you got to take real fights, and you'll lose. And that's the whole thing about high-level sport. That's what makes boxing so great, is you don't know who's going to win. And someone gets stopped, this happens. But it shouldn't detract them from, oh, they got beat, useless. Unfortunately, that is the mentality, and I don't think it's been beneficial for the sport. I think the way UFC is done, where you win, lose, draw, is much better. I'm not saying anyone wants to lose. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that. But I actually think it's a pitfall of boxing, where it's like, they're finished. Why? Because they got beat. Like, if you knew the result of everything, you wouldn't bother watching it, would you? So, kind of don't read too much into it.
Another spin on this then is that, okay, obviously AJ is going to come back, and he put out a post on his social media, and look, nobody's going to be judging AJ from our side, because what he's done for British boxing has been nothing but great. I think a few of us are in the job because of AJ, to be fair, and doing what we're doing. But is the Daniel Dubois rematch the way to go? Is that what he wants? What are you guys looking at? What's sort of the next steps?
Look, no one can speak for him. He makes his decisions. Okay. Anthony Joshua has always been the boss. Obviously, it's our job to give advice and the team around him to give advice. But this is me, if you're asking my opinion. Where he is in the sport, what he's done in the sport, what drives him is being the best, winning titles, etc., etc. Like, he's got the money at the end of the day. Like, he's made a lot of money. He's made a lot of money years ago, and could have, if the drive was gone, if the motivation was gone, could have finished it years ago. So for me, at his age, he's 35 now, I think, 35, 36. You've got to go into something that drives you and makes you, like, gives you that passion to want to win. And I think the Daniel Dubois fight is that. Look, at the end of the day, he got caught with a massive shot in the first round, as I said, and he never recovered from it. But he kept showing heart, kept getting it back up. That is heavyweight boxing. It's similar to what happened in the Andy Ruiz fight. And everyone said, oh, you should retire, oh, you shouldn't rematch him. He went back in there and beat Andy Ruiz. So I think he'll make the decision that's best for him, but I think the Daniel Dubois fight is the best route.
Final two from myself. We see the return of Anthony Yard, somebody who's sort of, obviously been in a dispute with his promoter for a while. But I want to ask you, from your guys' side, did you receive any approach or any sort of anything from Team Yard on maybe putting on a fight for him, or being on one of your cards?
Yeah, look, we're not going to get in between contractual disputes between promoters. Other people are happy to do that. They've shown on multiple occasions they're happy to do that. And I don't think that's something we're willing to do. Like, I think, and I've always said this, even prior to the relationship we now have with Queensberry, the job they've done for Anthony, there's a couple of, and this is loads of promoters, what I struggle to understand with with fighters, that the mentality is, boxing's a tough sport where you need people backing you. And I think what they've done for Anthony Yard has been unbelievable, just like what Queensberry have done for Daniel Dubois. I think they've done a tremendous job. And we talk about loyalty in the sport, and look, at the end of the day, it's a short career. You need to maximise your earnings. I get all that, and I understand that. But at the same time, I think you only have to look at, if a fighter ties themselves in with someone, not saying contract, but says you're the person for me, they will do anything for you. Look at Anthony Joshua with us. He could have made a lot more money at times in his career, making decisions, early stages, getting more. But in the long run, we all delivered together. Look, he delivered in the ring. Without him doing what he'd done, our bit would be largely irrelevant. But, I think there's a lot to be said for picking, and I'm not saying it's us, by the way. It might not be, we might not be right for you, but there's a lot to be said for pairing with someone and going, do you know what, you're the people for us. Because if you say that to someone, if you say, I'm with you for good, they will do anything for you. There's nothing they'll stop, you know. And I think there's so much in boxing, whether disloyalty is the wrong word, because, like I say, you got to do what's right for you. Long-term thinking and planning and mentality is missing a lot of the time. It's very short-term decisions. Yeah, that's my view. Maybe gone a bit off topic, but around that subject.
No, I get it. In regards to contractual disputes, then you've obviously sort of alluded to a certain outfits possibly getting involved with fighters. I think you're alluding to boxers. Is that where we're seeing this, or is that someone that you don't want to name?
I don't know, mate. That's what you just said. I think there's people who don't have much regard for legal ramifications. Well, so be it. You know, that will get dealt with in time. You know, boxing's a small business, and it all comes around at the end of the day. That's the reality of it. It's a small group of people. And yeah, but I don't know, that's for you to think, me not to say.
I'm not going to think anything. Listen, I'm not going to have no beef, no promoters, so good luck with whatever happens between you guys, to be fair. But yeah, look, fantastic card. We are going to sort of build throughout the whole week. We're on Tuesday right now, so we've got like a massive week coming up. Good luck with everything going forward, Frank, and we'll speak to you probably closer to fight now, or even on the fight night. Top man, thank you very much for talking to Pro Box fans.